Welcome back to the Live with Grace podcast, where we discuss sports, lessons, and life as athletes, professionals, creators, dreamers, and leaders. I'm Grace Byer, and I'm your host, and I'm so happy you're here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Live with Grace or the Live with Grace podcast. I am here today with Sammy Whiteman. She is a former college basketball player at Thomas More, also a national champion, an NAIA national champion. And she is a financial professional, a business owner, a coach, all of these different titles. And so just to start off, first of all, welcome onto the show today, Sammy. Thank you so much for reaching out to me, and it's so impressive what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And so for season 4 of the podcast, I've been starting off with this question because it's really interesting just to see how people respond. And the main phrase and mantra I use for my podcast and my brand is it's for athletes, dreamers, and leaders. It's for empowering athletes, dreamers, and leaders. So which of those titles do you feel like you align most with? Athlete, dreamer, or leader?
I would say leader. And it's funny because I feel like I've progressed through that from athlete to dreamer to leader. So I would say now I'm to the point where I'm a leader, but out of all those, I would say I identify with that the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely see that with all the coaching you do and all of the stuff that you're doing with your brand. In your one of your pin posts, you have all of these titles that you are a you're a business owner, you are a financial coach, you are a former athlete. What do you think grounds you? You know, you have all these things going on. What do you think grounds you in doing so many different things with your life?
Yeah, I would say, number one, being a child of God, and I try to make sure everything that I do is aligned within that. And the biggest lesson that I've taken in my entrepreneur journey is making sure that everything you do is in alignment with each other, or else you're going to try to pivot to all these different businesses and it's none of them are going to work. So, although I have different titles, they all go so hand in hand with each other, which makes it very easy to kind of go from one to the other.
Yeah, for sure. And so today on the podcast, the main thing that I want to focus on is one of your specialties, which is financial coaching, building financial literacy, and ultimately building financial freedom. And this is a topic that's super important, especially for people that are, around my age, coming out of college, in their early 20s. The habits that we build now are things that set us up for success or set us up for failure in the long term. So what would be some of the most common mistakes that you see athletes make, whether it be mistakes they make when they're still playing college sports or mistakes they make right off the bat when they come out of college?
Yeah, this is a great question, especially because NIL has completely changed the landscape for a lot of athletes. So I think the first misconception that athletes get and young people get is enjoy your 20s and you can be serious in your 30s, where really you should be using your 20s to set you up for the rest of your life. If I'm making NIL money and I set aside a part of that for long-term growth, I may never have to work past 30. But if I enjoy that money in my 20s, now when I get to 30, I'm going to have to really take my life serious and restart, where I could have just used that money to really invest in my future, right? So pay yourself first. Another misconception, that I would say personally happens is a lot of these athletes, they, what's the best way to put this? A lot of these athletes, when it comes to money, is they don't seek out mentorship, or maybe they don't feel like they're worthy enough of investing into that because they don't have the financial literacy, right? So many athletes don't take action toward that growth because they feel like they're not worthy enough to actually reach out to somebody and get that help, where you have resources all around you. You just have to take advantage of it. There's so many people around you willing to help you, give you that education. You just have to reach out and try to get it from them. And lastly, last thing that I would say to that is the hardest part about NIL right now is athletes are getting paid so much money, but the reality check that's going to hit them is if you go get an entry level job after school, you're probably going to take a major pay cut. So you need to learn how to handle that money and be strategic to set yourself up. So when you go from making 500K as an athlete and you have to go down to making 70, 80K a year, you don't have this identity and culture shock because your life has to change drastically, right? So just managing your money better is the biggest thing that I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So, put yourself in an athlete's shoes that maybe is if they're not making that much money, they're at least at a point where they're financially stable in college. For the most part, you're getting your meals taken care of, you're living comfortably, you are provided for, even though you're working really hard at your sport. For the most part, you don't have all the same bills and worries that you do when you're in the real world. So, what would you do knowing what you know now as an athlete, especially probably as an upperclassman? What are some of the habits you would start building now?
Yeah, great question. One of the biggest habits that I would create is not just learning how to save, but learning how to invest and make my money work for me. You can go save all you want, but when you're just saving in a savings account, your money's not doing absolutely anything for you. You're actually losing money by saving money because your dollars lose value every year due to inflation, right? So I wouldn't just learn how to save. I would learn how to invest and how to be smarter with my money. Therefore, when I get out and I am making more money, I know what to do with it to make my money work for me so I don't always have to work for money.
Yeah, so if you do have some money and you're like, okay, I want to invest, I can, put this money into something. My dad always says the greatest investment you'll ever make is in yourself. Like some of the things that you might, for example, if I'm trying to build a podcast, I might buy some nice equipment. That's an investment. But besides those things, how should people get started in, these long-term investment accounts or even for some maybe day trade, like what path would you suggest?
The thing is with finance is there's so many options out there. That's the beauty of it, but it can also make it hard, right? So one thing you said that was so good is number one, investing into yourself. When you're young, you have to pretty much expect that you're going to fail, but you have to get through the season anyway. So you might as well start early, invest in yourself early, invest in gaining skills because skills will pay you the rest of your life, right? So I do think that needs to be a priority when you're young. Those skills will make you more money in the long run. So that's first. But when it actually comes to choosing like what account should I use? What should I do? You have to know the difference in which vehicle provides what. And good thing is ChatGPT is all of our best friends now, and you can just look it up and find that out, right? A pretty common misconception a lot of people have is they think that a 401k or Roth IRA is all that exists. I don't know what else to do if I don't go invest in that. But really, you lock your money up in money jail when you put your money into vehicles like that. I would assume, most people watching this, most athletes don't want to work till they're 65, right? We want to be financially free early. So you have to do your due diligence to find vehicles that will allow you that freedom early. You need to find vehicles that will allow you to go deploy your money into assets. So for example, I work a lot in the infinite banking and insurance space as well. And what we teach people to do is put your money in a place where it can grow at 7 to 12%. And then when opportunities come up, like real estate, like, buying into businesses, things like that, now go take the money out of that and go invest in those assets that are going to produce income for you for the rest of your life. So the best way to create wealth is find vehicles like IULs, like whole life, even things as small as money markets, where you have liquidity and access to that money so that you can go deploy it into income producing assets that'll pay you for the rest of your life.
That makes a lot of sense. So if you are, say, an athlete that, you hear this, but you kind of say to yourself, I've never heard of this in my life, a day in my life. Can they reach out to you? Who should they reach out to? How should they find the guidance that they need to make sure they're investing in the right things at the right times? Or at
Yeah.
least making educated choices about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing with me as a former athlete myself is this is my calling. My calling is to actually provide athletes with this information, the information that I did not have until I got out of the game. So I love working with athletes, my Instagram, I'm sure Grace will have all that attached. Please reach out to me. Please ask for information. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just seek out a financial professional that can guide you to not just mainstream strategies, but all the other things that are out there that financial professionals can guide you to. You just have to go ask for the mentorship, right? But yeah, absolutely. I love working with athletes and people in the sports community.
And, there's always inherent risk in anything that you're investing in. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me to get over is it feels safer to put my money in a savings account or to just have it sit. What is your advice for athletes to kind of get over that hump of, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna not do anything, and to actually seek that help, seek that guidance, and make those moves that are gonna set them up for success financially?
Yeah, great question. So at a base level, it's also important to understand the three different wealth building vehicles that are out there, the three different ways money grows. So Number one is fixed. Fixed growth is like a savings account where your money is only going to grow if you go put the money into that vehicle, right? We don't just
Mhm.
see our checking account grow without us adding more in. That's a fixed account. Second is variable. Your stocks, your Roth, your 401k, your crypto, anything that's constantly fluctuating, that's what's called variable growth. Then last is a category called indexed. Indexed is getting the upside of the market without actually needing the downside or without actually participating in the downside. And that's where you kind of get that happy medium, right? I want the growth of the market, but I don't love risk. So, how can I kind of get the best of both? So, for somebody like that, I would actually say indexed is probably a great option for you. And then indexed options also allow you the liquidity to go do something with that money too, right? So, I would tell them, number one, get a basic understanding of the three different ways money grows. And if somebody doesn't want that risk on the front end, use an index strategy. And then when you go buy assets, now you might have a little more risk because crypto's risky, real estate's risky, but you
Mhm.
can kind of play your cards right, whether you are super risk tolerant or you're super risk averse.
Yeah, for sure. So for athletes, there's ways to get around, just feeling like you're gambling basically, and you can lose anything. There's options where it might be a bit more conservative or fit for your needs. And I also wanted to bring it back to your college career, your experience as an athlete. I played Division two. My third year, I was actually in AI, and then my school changed to Division two for my senior year. So, and I know you played NAI, you played Division two and NAI basketball, and very, high level of competition. But there's not as much of that revenue that you earn as you do if you're at a high major D1 Power 5 type school. So what would you do if you were currently, not at a tiny school, but making a name for yourself, competing, in the flow of college sports, but also kind of needing to pave your own way and create your own opportunities as far as brand deals, as far as setting yourself up for financial success? What are some of the things that you would do if you were back at Thomas More?
Yes, so good. I would create a personal brand outside of who I was as just an athlete. So the hard part about that is you got to do the deep work. You got to figure out if your sport didn't exist, who are you and what demographic can you relate to? Or within your athletic journey, what type of athlete can you relate to? My athletic experience was so unique because I went from being the starter and a captain as a freshman to transferring to that NAIA school. And I got so humbled, like I probably saw the court for 6 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that was I realized I could reach any athlete. I could talk to the five-star athlete and relate. I could talk to the person who never saw a minute in a game because I could also relate to them. And that was my unique niche. My niche was that I have experienced all of that, right? So, number one, figure out the type of person you can relate to and then figure out who you are outside of sport. The easiest way to build a personal brand is to number one, just create your brand pillars. What are the top three things that make me me? And how can I create content around that so people resonate with me? People people will follow you not just because you're an athlete, but because they relate to who you are when the ball stops bouncing or whatever sport you play. When that's done, make sure people can relate to you in the long term, and that's how you can really set yourself up to build a name in the space and attract that NIL money without necessarily having the athletic accolades.
Um, I think that's great advice. And I think one thing I've realized, especially after coming out of NCAA Division two sports, is that a lot of times you can actually look at it as a advantage because you kind of have to do everything yourself and it's not as big of a transition coming out. I mean, of course, at certain schools you have more resources than others, but for the most part, you don't have a designated NIL person to help you. You have to I really had to go out of my way to make the connections that I made, to meet the athletes, to interview people, to, find internships, to find opportunities, to kind of set myself up for success in the long run. So I think those are skills that, translate to life and to, especially if you're building your own brand. And what are some things that you would advise athletes absolutely never do this, do not do this when it comes to taking care of your money or setting yourself up for financial success?
Yeah, I would keep it super simple and say quit wasting it and spending it on things that add no value to your life. know the difference between an asset and a liability and make sure more money is going toward assets than liabilities. Liabilities will take your money and you'll never see it again. Assets will take your money and multiply it. So, that I would just keep it simple. Know where your money's going. At the very least, just create a simple budget for yourself as a starting point. But yeah, the biggest thing I would say is a no-no is just quit wasting your money on a shirt you feel like you need to have so somebody approves of you. Like go put that into something that's going to grow for the long term and set you up for success 10, 20, 30 years later.
And for athletes that want to get connected with you specifically to, get some maybe personal advice or coaching on how to set themselves up for success, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I would say my Instagram is probably the easiest way. Second, my email, which, I'll give over to Grace. And then third, I can also get her a Calendly link for people to just book appointments with me as well. Like I said, with athletes and people in the sports community, I'd love to do free financial reviews just to get that out there to give you more confidence and show you where you're going. So Instagram, email, and then I can have my Calendly linked as well.
That would be awesome. And I'm going to have everything in the description of this podcast. This podcast is going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, basically everywhere you get your podcasts. So if you are listening, wherever you're listening, you can find that information in the description and on Instagram as well. I'll have it. I'll share it on Instagram as well. So I'll tag you in everything, of course. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for, your time, for reaching out, for being so open to share your advice. And I think that this is at least a podcast episode that'll get people thinking in the right direction and maybe even curious to start learning and becoming more financially literate, to set themselves up for after school or the next phase of their life. So thank you so much again for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And, like she said, if you're an athlete and this spoke to you, I'd love to pour more into you. So thank you.